I have Renee de Sousa with me today. And Renee de Sousa, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a producer in Toronto. I originally, we have a very, very small company. We call it a micro company. So it's basically myself and my life partner as well, who's our creative director. And the two of us work on pretty much every aspect of production. And then we round out the team with various collaborators, usually freelancers from pretty much all over the country.
Wow, that sounds really cool. I read that Rebels focuses on pioneering women. Can you take me back to the moment you realized that all of this and using AI was the right tool for this specific project?
Yeah, so basically, we had been dabbling with AI since DALL-E came out. So I think that's 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And we've always been very tech forward and trying to, we get bored easily. So we like to dabble in anything new. Will, my creative partner, is also someone who loves to learn and is a very self-taught individual. And he was also trained as an editor. And he did a lot of commercials in the in the traditional way. So when AI started coming along and we saw the potential of what was coming, he basically, had the reflection of, oof, if I don't reinvent myself now, in a few years, I'm most likely out of a job because AI will be able to edit. Not, maybe not as well as a human, but the large part of the work will be done, and then we're going to be fine tweaking. So basically, yeah, he took 2023 to reinvent himself, to study all of the platforms that were available at the time, and kind of make himself really proficient in being able to create with a lot of intention, basically, because I find it's easy to create stuff with AI kind of haphazardly, but then to really try to harness the technology to get us somewhere where we actually want to go, that's a whole other set of skills. So that's what he owned. We pitched the idea initially. There was very many iterations of the project. We had a live action at one point, then we had more traditional animation, but we always were constrained with budgets. So then we saw an opportunity here to use this new technology, and as you mentioned, kind of a rebellious streak to kind of do it in honor of these women as well, who tried to do something different and new, so that it fit. It was very meta with the project, and we also knew that we wanted to integrate archives that were available, but also because of the time period in which these women lived, or their social class, or just the fact that they were women and considered less important, there was very, very, for some women, we had very little archives. So we were able to recreate the visuals that we wanted with AI and create our tableaus as well, and to be able to tell their stories. And I want to make a precision as well that our images we create with AI, so about 95% of our visuals are AI, but the animation and every other part of the creative process, the writing, the voice, everything else, that's all by humans. Just a bit of a nuance there.
Well, actually, talking about that, how did you navigate your use of AI in your productions? Like, where do you draw the line between being AI generated versus AI assisted?
Basically, it's without any human intention and human intervention. That's how we end up with what we call AI slop, because it's just regurgitation and it brings us to just the middle. So it's, what comes out of the machine on the first try, let's say, is, probably higher than what I could draw or create just with my unskilled hands, but still pretty mediocre. So it's really what we wanted to do is really kind of push the medium to its maximum and really have an intention but behind every picture, and then also use what AI is kind of notorious for. So, creating, we'll have often like 50 versions of the same image with different tweaks. So the fast iterations, the also the lack of congruity. So sometimes the same woman will repeat her many times, but then like her face changes, her clothes changes. So all of that also played into the aesthetics of the show. And when we saw that, you're very prolific with the amount that you create, and we decided to use those iterations to be able to add texture and also add movements to the pieces, which is something that's very particular to using AI, because I would have never asked an illustrator, like, can you make me 50 different copies of this same image, but like a little bit different every time? Like that would have been a bit ridiculous of an ask. So, but you know, being the machine, it does not care. And it's also what it gives you. So we were able to use it as well to our advantage to have a new look as well.
So you kind of mentioned also that there was a kind of like a trial and error aspect to it. Can you tell me how that kind of compares to traditional, like you kind of talked about, CGI work, where you tell an illustrator, give me this kind of thing? How does that compare?
No, there's a lot of trial and errors. Basically, what we've also noticed through the whole production process is that there's no one platform that will do everything. So when we create, we use like a plethora of platforms, depending on, sometimes it's the angle, sometimes it's we're trying to get a specific position, and not every platform wants to do it. So it really depends on what's the end idea, and then how do we get there, versus like, oh, this is the tool and we are restrained by the capacities of that tool. So we really wanted to kind of explode the thing, always have the end goal, the idea in mind, and the intention, and find our way through the many tools that are available to get there.
Are there any tools you would recommend filmmakers use that you kind of found really helpful?
It really depends on what you want to do. That's the thing. I mean, for the first season, we used Midjourney a lot, but for the second season, again, we're just, it really depends on the scene. Sometimes we'll have an archive image that we want to use as a reference. Certain programs are better at doing that than others. Sometimes we want to start from full scratch. Again, different platforms are better than others. Sometimes we'll add text. Again, we have to look at which platforms are more successful in achieving what we want. So it's really a case by case, image by image basis that we'll kind of explore. And the tools, as you know, are ever changing. So the first year of production, we were in production for 2 years, which was a year longer than we expected. Especially that, you know, everybody was like, oh, with AI, it'll be so funny. It'll be so fast, no worries. But obviously it was not. There was a huge learning curve. There was also ever changing tools. So pretty much every week something new would come out, which would kind of make us reevaluate the look and feel and the direction and where we were going and the possibilities. So it felt a little bit like quantic production, like everything was possible. So our broadcaster TFO was extremely generous with their time and patience, and really gave us the time to explore and hone the tools, so that we started creating in 2024. And then the tools stabilized a bit more. They're still in evolution, but they kind of, you know, stopped being so ever-changing in 2025. So that's when we were really able to kind of really decide on what the look and feel was, and then kind of tweak as well all the episodes that we had done in 2024 as we went along, because certain things were possible in 2025 that were not possible in 2024. So for example, matching faces from one shot to the next was something that was a bit haphazard in 2024, but then with with OREF and everything else, became much more easier to achieve in 2025. So yeah, it was a very interesting, very roller coaster type of production.
So how would you balance, like, let's say a new tool comes up that is, for example, able to do faces consistently? How do you decide whether you do go back and change all of that, or just be more efficient with your time and continue episodes? How do you balance the quality with the efficiency?
It's a little bit of both. So I mean, we're working with a network, so obviously schedules are to be considered. We don't have the luxury of just kind of going and never finishing, because that's the thing. It's like there is the possibility of feeling like you're never finished, but I think that came even before AI. Like we have a saying, it's like, you don't finish a project, you let it go. So that's been our gauge, but it was really especially with how we felt about it. So if we felt that in comparison to the later episodes, the more earlier ones didn't quite stand up to the quality or to the test of what we thought was acceptable to put out. Then we went back and redid some of the images. We didn't redo entire sequences or anything like that. It was very much more in the faces and in the consistency that we wanted to have throughout the episode.
And did the broadcaster have any pushback towards the AI integration, or were they kind of very on board with all this AI integration to the production of the show?
No, they were very on board. Like they obviously asked a bunch of questions to make sure that they felt that their ethics were respected. We also were very transparent with her insurance, and everybody. We found a few ways to explain without being present to the people watching at home, so I can get into that later. But TFO was very open, was very curious as well, and because of the nature of the show, thought it was kind of the perfect opportunity. So they jumped in once all the legal stuff was cleared. They jumped in with both feet and were very supportive of the process.
Well, so you mentioned your audience and telling your audience that. Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, basically, because we knew we couldn't sit with someone and go like, oh, this is AI, oh, this is a real archive, and kind of piecemeal the production like that. And also, you don't want that kind of constant disruption because it takes you out of the story. So we wanted to make sure that the storytelling remains seamless. So we have 3 tools that we used. One is that there is a disclaimer. If you go to the title card, under the title, there is a disclaimer saying that it's a mix of archives and also images created with AI. A lot of the images we create are bigger than life, very surreal. You mentioned the Abby Hoffman episode. That one is a bit more recent, so sometimes it's more in the jokiness and the kind of the bigger than life aspect of images that we're able to translate that. But if you go back a few, like a century or two, in some of the stories of the older women or the other women that come from an older period, we have like selfies from 1876. That's obviously not a thing. We have people, exiting trains with rolly suitcases in the 1700s. So again, it's like all of this visual code that the kids can relate to, but in a very archivey texture as well. So we loved to do that kind of mix, because it's like a subtle but also obvious way to say like, hey, this is made up. We're in the story. Come on for this ride. And then the information is factual, but the images are just a bit more exaggerated. So that was a second tool. And then in the credits at the end, we put the real archives. So if you had any doubts, you can do a comparison. You see the real people. You understand that these were illustrations that were created, so that there's no more misunderstanding about who's who. And I think it's also a convention that we have in storytelling regardless. Like when we watch something with an actor, we don't have to be constantly reminded that, this actor is not the real person. It's something that we accept. I understand that because we're creating images, and even our archivist had questions about that. How people are going to go, oh no, that this is real and this is not real. And we're like, well, you have to take it into everything can be taken out of context. There's nothing we can do about that, but within the context, it plays, and it's self-explanatory. So we found that we were ethically okay with that, and we also went through the regular licensing of archives and pictures, say that we use them to inspire ourselves, or we use them at the end as well, in order to make sure that we were respecting copyright laws.
And in some cases, I saw that you, the people you were trying to reference had no archives at all. And so you kind of had to create your own figures of what they actually look like. How do you navigate that? How do you create a person that you don't know, you don't have any pictures to go based off of?
Well, that's really interesting. So we have 2 instances of that right now. So we have the first episode of season 1, Les Sœurs des Loges. We have 3 pictures of them, and like 2, we see them in one of them, we see them really well. There's another one where it's, years after, where one of them has, you know, probably like 20 years in the future, and then the other one, she's about like this big. So we used the main picture and used OREF to be able to recreate their faces and their bodies throughout different eras of their lives, but also eras of their journey, let's say. So that was challenging, but at the same time, because we're working in animation, there's certain tropes, if you want, that we can use, as in like making our women look the same pretty much throughout their whole lives, with the same hair, the same look a little bit, just so that we have a continuity as well, and we don't get lost of like, oh, this is the young version and then this is the older version. So that was something that we could do. But we have a bigger challenge for season 2, which is one of our women, Tenalcher, who is a Dene woman from the end of 1600s, early 1700s. There exists no archives, so no paintings or anything. So now we're going by physical descriptions from, in her case, the Hudson's Bay company had lots of logs where, because she collaborated with them. So we had physical descriptions of her, and we're working with a Dene consultant who is a prof who's devoted a lot of her life and her career to this woman. So that was one of my first, the first time I showed someone to someone, like a version that we had created, and was so nervous to make sure that, you know, is this what you had in mind? Does she look like you always imagined? So far so good. But that's also very cool to be able to give a face to these women that never had one before. So that's fun. Yeah,
that's really interesting. It's a really great take on the tech, and I wonder how in the future we're going to have all these unique ways to utilize AI with really old stuff. You know, the archives of the Hudson's Bay company with all this new tech, and then kind of merging that to create something you couldn't really do before.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, talking kind of about that, how do you foresee like the landscape of film in Canada kind of changing post this AI revolution? And do you think that smaller independent studios get leverage in being more fit to adapt to these this like new AI tools into the creative process?
Yeah, I think that well, for us anyways, I can't speak for big studios because I've never really been part of that system. I can imagine that there's going to be a crunch in big studios, because you do end up kind of eliminating a lot of the grunt work. So a lot of what used to be assistant work might disappear. Does that mean like we'll have to find another way to onboard people, because it's not going to be the grunt work anymore, but nobody wants to do grunt work for the rest of the, for their entire career. So I think the entry points are going to be different. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like. But I know that for a small studio like us, the advent of AI has made our output much more interesting. For example, in Les Sœurs des Loges, the first episode, we have the monster of assimilation. So this big smoke monster that is working for the English government, who wants to assimilate the French people of Ontario. And I mean, we were working with legislation. We were talking about laws. We're like, oh my God, like, how do we make this fun and attractive? So we created the smoke monster. But for us to have him in a pre-AI world would have been cost prohibitive. We did not have the function to do 3D in-house, and we didn't have the expertise as well. So that gave us the possibility to really elevate to the next level, that particular episode. But we've seen this in so many different areas of production. So basically, my creative partner has always been, I call him the Swiss Army knife of production, because he directs, he animates, he edits. He's a very good story editor as well. So my prediction is that it will be much more interesting for vertically integrated creatives. So creatives that are creative artistically, but also creative technically. And as those two positions used to be kind of like two people side by side, or many people side by side, I think more and more we're going to integrate them in one. So it's going to mean a retraining of a lot of people, and a a lot of self-training as well to be able to kind of develop either the technical side or the artistic side, depending on what our penchant was before.
Interesting. That's a really cool answer. I think it's a great prospect to kind of look on how that's going to change in the future. So has Space Pirates specifically taken any steps to implement any of the lessons you learned during the Rebels AI experiment into kind of the organization on a broader level past this one project of Rebels?
Yeah, well, I see that even in season 2, there's a lot that we didn't used to do in season 1. So, for example, sometimes we'll have animations that are, you know, either repetitive or very specific, and that usually work better using a script than doing it keyframe by keyframe. So now we're actually able with Claude Code to be able to create our own scripts, which we didn't do before. So that's been an interesting process as well that we didn't anticipate until season 2. So it's more that it's more incremental little things that slowly but surely kind of make its way down the pipeline, and then again augment our output by making it so that we're spending less time doing the little nitty-gritty things that take time and that add production value. We can kind of delegate that to a certain part of that to different AI agents, and then concentrate on the bigger picture and the storytelling and the creativity. I think the main thing is that, you know, I don't think we're going to work less. I think we're just going to work different. And we're always in the optic of being able to push the envelope further. That's been our approach. It's you know, not like, okay, let's take Fridays off. It's like, ooh, you know, we can now give this, which we weren't able to do before. So yeah.
Okay, well, do you have any other thing you want to mention about the Rebels production? It's a really cool production, so.
No, I think like basically we were just very happy that we were able to tell these stories. I think we also had a great responsibility towards these women to make sure that we told their stories accurately. We were able to also put their stories into context. That was very important for us. When we talk about history, it's easy to forget how far we've come, especially for the lives of women. Sometimes it's a bit scary because it looks like we're going back on certain aspects. So that's something that we weren't anticipating, that we would be so relevant in 2026. Yeah, that's been kind of our goal as well, is not to only tell the stories of these women, but to tell them in the larger context, so that, you know, boys and girls and, you know, men and women are able to also identify. Because yes, we talk about the position of women, but injustice and equality touches everybody. So it's always to kind of bring it back to the larger context of life, and seeing how, if these women with little power, little agency, you know, a lot of oppression, were able to break through and do amazing things. I think that when we feel those things, as we inevitably do throughout our lives, we're able to kind of like, you know, feed on their strength and their desire to do different and to do better. I think we can all learn from that. So it's been a privilege to be able to tell these stories.
Well, thank you for that answer. It's wonderful. On that note, do you have a movie that you would like the audience to check out?
A weird connection, but probably like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Because I think of its quantic feeling that like everything is possible. Like we felt a lot like that. So I think there's a bit of a synergy there. But also, if you read about the production, if I'm not mistaken, they were a very, very small team as well to do all of the effects. And I think it's like it's the possibility. You can do great things in big studios, but they're like aircraft carriers. They don't turn around fast, and it's a long and lengthy process. Versus when you're a small team, you know, the connections are very fast because it's all these very small closed loops, and you kind of have less friction, because there's just less places to frictionate. That's not a word. So that you're able to just go faster, go further, try new things. So I think, yeah, that would probably be my recommendation. Yeah.